Okay guys, so yeah, we're here with obviously the 1FZ 80 series engine here, and we're dealing with a crack in the oil cooler. Probably can't see it too well from here, but just down here where I'm pointing, there's a crack right in the housing there. The coolant's been dripping, and I believe the gasket's also gone because there's a fair amount of dripping underneath the manifold here where the oil cooler housing is. Now it's a pretty straightforward job really. I've already taken the heat shield off the two manifolds here just to obviously get to the manifold bolts there and have a look as well for diagnosing purposes. So I'm just going to show you, this is the first time I've actually attempted this type of job, so I thought I'd video it anyway for my own purposes and hopefully share with you guys a way of dealing with it. So to start off with, I've taken that heat shield off, and that's pretty straightforward. They're just a few bolts. There's about 4 bolts I believe, straight off with a normal socket piece, and then the tricky part is really getting these manifold bolts. You see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and of course with the other cylinders over there. Now these bolts are really tight. You're going to need a 14mm deep socket to get them off, which I have used a big extendy bar with the 14mm piece on the end here, and obviously for the leverage there's an extension piece if need be, but I did not need it. So make sure you've got some sturdy equipment to deal with this one. So yeah, obviously crack them, loosen them, take them off. There's also 2 bolts where the exhaust pipe connects through the extractors here. I've actually got upgraded extractors on this one, so they shouldn't have been on there for too long, but they're pretty stiff, so trying to get underneath to get to these 2 bolts underneath the manifold here, so it's real tricky. Anyway, I'm getting there, but a bit of WD-40 on these bolts a couple of times a day leading up to the job will certainly help. Anyway, so I'll give you a bit of progress once I've removed these bolts and see how we're looking. Okay, we're back. We have got our bolts off all the manifold and our 2 bolts off the exhaust there outlet which connects to the manifold. Now the 2 bolts under there are also 14mm, and I should note that this is the size of the extension bar you are going to need to use. As you can see in my hand, that's a fair amount of extension. You need it to get the leverage from underneath, otherwise you're going to have to drop on the diff there, obviously the pan. You're going to need to drop your pan to get enough leverage with a standard length socket, wrench, whatever you can get under there. This is the way to go. 14mm socket on the end of a good extension. There is even another extension piece which you can use to give you even more leverage. The longer the better, and that'll allow you to crack those bolts under the thing, because without those you won't be able to pull. Will not be able to pull this off. Okay, it needs to all come out. And remembering that there will be a gasket O-ring which may fall out when you pull this bit out, as well as the gasket behind the exhaust here. Okay, and as you can see here, I have got the manifold off, and you can see, hopefully on that angle, see where I'm poking down here, you'll see there's actually a hole in my oil cooler housing, and if I can zoom in a little bit there, I might take this off, and there we go. You can see it, the coolant's actually all dried up and crusty, and I've also got a leak under here which the gasket's been leaking and dripping down. You can actually see the green staining through there. It's been leaking and causing a lot of coolant loss. I was very lucky not to cook my engine one day when I lost quite a few pints of coolant, so it was very lucky that I don't drive this car too far. Anyway, and I thought I'd also show how to get to the underneath of your exhaust flange as well, which was a real pain cracking those bolts. These ones here, these things here were tough enough as it was with the access you got from the top here, but underneath, so what I actually needed for that was one of these. Now it's just a standard big socket, but you need a big long extension bar on it and a 14mm head on it. There's a little bit of a deeper head on this one just to get over the bolts properly, and you're going to need to get right up from down there under the car, and let me just remove stopping the crap from getting in the, right from down there. You have to get right under the car, get underneath to crack the bolts on the exhaust flange there. And when you're coming up from down here, you cannot reach with a standard socket and standard extension. You're going to need the big guns to get up through there. So I thought I'd just bring that up for anyone who runs into this issue. Make sure you have your tools ready to go, or you're going to get stuck with these last two bolts, which you need to get off. You can't just pull the manifold against it. It's too solid. All right, so we'll get stuck into this oil cooler housing down here, and we'll rip her off and replace the gasket and a new housing which I've ordered, and we'll put her all back together again. Alright guys, we're back. I'm at the stage where I've just drained the radiator and the coolant from the engine. So I just wanted to make a couple of points here now. Obviously the bottom hose is down there, and you can see there's a bucket, and my hose is just dripping the last of the coolant into it now. Now I haven't actually removed the radiator or the shroud. I've loosened up the shroud, but it won't come out obviously. I'm using it, so I'm trying to get access to that part of the hose, and there's not a lot of room to get in there and reef the hose back onto the stainless steel piping you can see down there, which connects through the water pump system there. Now obviously you have to drain this before that you can pull that housing off, because the minute you pull this housing off, coolant is going to spew everywhere. So you have to do that. So you drain the radiator, obvious, and just around here we're going to need to drain from the main block. Now in order to drain the main block, you need to get the screw, which is the one I have here. You'll see it. Mine was marked with this for some reason. I don't know if yours is the same. Anyway, it's a 14mm hex head. You need to use a socket about, socket about this size with 14mm on the end of it, and you're going to need the extension bar, because you're going to need to get it down directly under here, and you'll see that hex bolt right behind the transmission fluid check level stick. So straight under there, it's probably about 30 centimeters behind the oil filter down there, to almost in the same line on the engine block. It's really not that hard. Crack it, it'll start dribbling out, a bit like your sump with your oil. So I just wanted to bring that up, and once you've drained that, make sure you put a good sized bucket down there to collect it all, and then we can get stuck onto this oil cooler housing. Alright, so next part will be coming up. Alright, so I've just taken all the bolts off. Remember, there's quite a few. Some of mine actually didn't come off with the bolt itself, whereas some of them did. And so most of them came off, but looks like some of them are pretty seized, or that's maybe the way it's supposed to be, I'm guessing. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, I think it's meant to be that way. Okay. Anyway, we're about to pull it off and have a look, and oh yeah, awful. Look at that. That's what's happened. All that crap that's broken through here has just gotten into the oil cooler itself. So you're going to have to pull all that out and give it a good clean, and once I've pulled this out, I'll give it a little bit better filming. So, alright, so the oil cooler housing is off. As you can see, there's a bit of a puddle of coolant there, a little bit of oil. Yeah, it's going to need a bit of a clean out, obviously. Best to do it with rags and whatnot, and just wipe it till it's clean. And then once we've finished with the new housing and the new gaskets, we'll bolt this all back together again. So we'll have a look at the old one. Now, look at that. That is not a good sign. I dare say someone has used some of that stop engine oil leak or something, the previous owner. That shouldn't be there. That's a lot of gunk. Yeah. I'm more concerned with the oil cooler itself, with some of that gunk on the front there. But the oil cooler itself seems to be in good tack, but I'll have to give that a good clean out as well. And too bad around there. It's all good, the seal there, which is what I was more concerned with. This thing obviously is going in the bin. So anyway, yep, let's we'll get the new one out, new gaskets out, and give the intake there a bit of a clean out, outtake I should say, and yeah, put it back together again. Okay, so we've got our new housing, the old oil cooler. I've cleaned him out.
Just give it a bit of a light sand off the top, get rid of that crud, and a new gasket, of course, as you can see. And she's about to go back on, so you can see I've cleaned that up. It's don't be put off that brown. It's just a bit of oxidized metal. I've cleaned that up as good. To be very careful. There's a coolant intake on that side and that side as well. And you don't want to be getting stuff back into your engine. So make sure you clean with absolute care. And yeah, make sure there's no little bits. I've just wiped it out about 3 or 4 times. Make sure there's no little bits of crud and flaky metal that obviously builds up in these little bits down there and there. So, and then we'll put our housing back on. Alright guys, so we're getting the manifold back on now. I've just put the first couple of bolts in. New gasket, obviously, big thing to remember. Just a quick thing I needed to point out, that a bit of a myth busted with how to put these manifold studs back in. I've heard that the key to doing it is to put these in finger tight, and then these the nuts obviously to be torque wrenched back on pretty tight, obviously. And so just remembering the studs themselves, finger tight back into the head, and then the studs, the bolt heads, obviously they'll be torque wrenched back on. So just a bit of a note on that. And the same deal with the 2 down there at the exhaust flange. Remember to put your new gasket in there as well.